All right, well, today's session is about prohibition, or what we would probably refer to as the Roaring Twenties. Although for many of us, we wouldn't think of the Roaring Twenties as a great time if there's not alcohol involved at some point. So we find a true contradiction of that term. The 1920s is an extraordinary time in America's history. I mean, we have tremendous social, economic, and political change going on in the country. I mean, the country is really moving in many directions simultaneously. I mean, we have the rise of big band jazz, and women express their sexuality and political views openly, where in the past they largely kept it quiet and sat in the back row to let the men take the front seat. And so we're seeing a radical change in what's going on. A prohibition essentially begins in 1920 with the 18th Amendment, which was officially ratified in January of 1919. And essentially the 21st Amendment, which is ratified in 1933 to eliminate prohibition. So we have this, 13-year window. Again, when we think of prohibition, we often forget the connection to World War I. I mean, prohibition and World War I were back to back, and think of it as the soldiers who've been fighting in Europe in 1918, essentially can enjoy the fruits of excitement and travel where they had not done before. And, 1 week after the armistice agreement is signed to end World War I, in November 18th, 1918, the country ratifies the Temporary Wartime Prohibition Act. So here the soldiers are about to return home, and the country says, we welcome you home with open arms, but you can't have any beer to enjoy with your buddies. So there's a real conflict of things that are going on in the 20s. We think of prohibition as just starting, in the late teens, but the reality is the moral society movements are really gaining footage as early as the 1860s. And these moralist movements are trying to get the men to play better, behave better, to be more social. So the whole prohibition movement has long, deep roots in 19th century culture. By 1900, the Anti-Saloon League and the Women's Christian Temperance Union are very formidable groups that are just anchoring the cause to stop the consumption of alcohol. Temperance songs that were typically used by these groups were often sentimental, spiritual, or patriotic tunes with lyrics that were often set to folk melodies. So we think of them as your Methodist church hymns on the front steps of the courthouse. And then you have the anti-prohibition musical artists, essentially Tin Pan Alley, which in the 1880s and through the 1930s was really what I refer to as the America's musical Saturday Night Live kind of group, commenting on the political and social issues that are in everybody's front page of their newspapers, of which they're making fun of. So we have this contradiction between two strong, distinct movements in music. And we wanted to focus on how prohibition, the wets and the dries, the pro-drinkers and the anti-drinkers, their perspectives as they're reflected in music. And, that was the purpose of this exhibition. We've had a good time doing it. Um, Probably one of the most popular and strangest of the anti-drinking songs is "Father's a Drunkard and Mother is Dead." Goodness gracious. I mean, that title scares the bejesus out of most people. Yeah, how can that be a happy tune? And essentially, Susan McFarlane Parkhurst was a prominent writer of parlor songs during the 1860s. And this particular tune is essentially the theme song for the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And as you read the lyrics and we'll listen to the melody, essentially, I think of this tune as your crying in your beer sort of tune, but without the beer. The song is about little Bessie, who laments, one, the death of her mother, laments the fact that women are still having difficulty, and her in particular, having difficulty finding a work. It's a man's world, and women aren't really looked at as people who need to work or can find work. So she's lamenting the fruitless efforts. And finally, she laments about her layabout father, who's more interested in drink at a local bar than he is in the welfare of his daughter. So we've got this kind of crying in your beer song that is just, I try not to laugh, but it's a fun piece. So let's listen to it a bit and get a sense of the song. And we'll stop there. Otherwise, we'll all start crying in our coffee, tea, or whatever else. Let's look at a different song here. The Temperance Train. This is a great tune. Another um, anti-drinking song. The composer of this is Emmett G. Coleman, and Coleman is essentially a newspaper editor for the Twin City Times of Basic City, Virginia. So think of it as a newspaper editor who likes to think of himself as a composer. And the tune's pretty interesting. Um, the the tunes that he typically wrote were propaganda tunes that the Women's Christian Temperance Union just latched onto and loved to use. And Nolan, do you want to say something more about this tune? You did a lot of research on this piece.
Yeah, it's fairly typical of many of the parlor songs that would have been sung during the Women's Christian Temperance Union meetings, often involving some sort of chorus. So we see here in this particular case, we have 4 voices, up to 5 voices at particular moments that can sing this melody. And many of the voices in that will hear this, there's one person that's singing the melody, and then everybody else is sort of making vocable train noises, ding dong, choo choo sorts of sounds, in order to simulate the sounds of a train. And so when we're listening to this, it's supposed to be sort of a fun, let's get us riled up sort of song to try to inspire the group that's at the meeting itself.
And just tell us a little bit more about the cartoon that actually appears in the 1915 issue of this song.
Right. So you can see this political cartoon with a man in a top hat. He has a tie that reads Temperance, and there's a bottle in which a demon is coming out of it, and he says, "Good heavens, are you the demon rum?" And the demon says, "No, I'm the angel prohibition." So in this case, we're demonizing the drink, and it's would have been tied to the meeting itself, trying to propagandize the evils of drink.
Let's listen to a bit of this song. And we'll stop there. I will send all of the recordings to Shifa so that if you want to hear the whole piece, I hope you will be able to sit back and enjoy it. The next piece we have in our exhibition is "Goodbye, Wild Women, Goodbye." It essentially placed these 2 songs next to each other, essentially to show you musically the complex paradoxes between the pro and anti-drinking movements. And it really quite compelling. Essentially, the melody relies on a heavily syncopated ragtime rhythm, all right? And, so the melody is so forth, is straight ragtime, but the lyrics themselves, by today's standards, convey essentially what we refer to as the many stereotypes about women that were held by men in the 1920s. Quite frankly, the words crudely lament men's inability to access free-flowing alcohol and women. And so we've got this kind of yin and yang of prohibition during the 1920s, which is pretty prevalent throughout the 20s. Let's listen to this in part because the melody is quite a bit hipper than the hymn we just listened to.
Oh, what a terrible blow. Congress said liquor must go. It's not the drinking that's got me thinking. That's not what worries me so. I don't mind losing my pals, but think of the beautiful gals. 'Cause after the country goes dry, goodbye wild women, goodbye. How on earth do you expect to win them unless you get a little bit of good liquor in them? The ladies will start to act shy right after the 1st of July. Then every night you'll see many a sinner taking his own little wifey to dinner. The minute the country goes dry, goodbye wild women, goodbye.
And we'll stop there before the next vocal line. So just harken back to the hymn and the very straight-laced, prohibition movement kind of melody, the kind of thing you'd hear in church. And then you've got this other tune with a hip rhythm and melody going on. And now just imagine your Publix, which one of the tunes is going to have you tapping your toe and listening to essentially the melody and maybe chuckling about the words. So if you're beginning to, I'd like to portray just this didactic kind of relationship between the prohibition and the anti-prohibition movements in terms of the music. Another tune that we've selected for this exhibition is Sierra Will Soon Be Dry Like You. And again, both of these tunes are written in 1919, yet prohibition doesn't officially take effect until 1920. So they're really, Tin Pan Alley recognizes that, hey, we passed legislation that's going to eliminate all alcohol. We've got about a year here before our supply is cut off. So essentially, we're going to lament all of this loss of free-flowing alcohol. And so we've got this sarcastic foxtrot, which ironically was heavily marketed by Edison Records. And we think of Edison in terms of his focus on sound recordings. Edison focused on what we think of as high art tunes and so forth. All right, and that was principally what we wanted. He was very conservative on just about every issue, with the exception of alcohol. From that point of view, he felt leave it up to the individual to have access to a sip or two, but they have to have the good common sense to control themselves. So we find again this dyad here between the individual musicians and engineers and so forth with prohibition, and essentially the movement. The lyrics utilize a lot of slang about drinking, and the Tin Pan Alley composer just have a heyday with this piece. Nolan, you want to say something about this? You were the one who found it.
Yeah. So thinking about this juxtaposition of high and low art that Scott was talking about here. I think you can really hear some of that, especially when you think about the Temperance Train that we just listened to 2 songs ago. It's this complex sort of polyphonic choral sound, which isn't as readily accessible as a simple melody over, a fun sort of ragtime piano lick accompaniment. And we get single melodic lines mostly in the Tin Pan Alley songs. When you're buying your sheet music, as we see here, we're looking at all the covers of the sheet music here. When you buy your sheet music, it would be you bring this home to your living room and be able to perform for yourself. That's who they're marketing to, is for people to bring the sheet music home and play on the piano and sing the song on their own. But they're doing it in a way that they're also marketing their audio recordings. And so the audio recording for this particular piece came out the very next year that the piece was published. And it's a really fascinating recording, a very strange sounding recording. And we probably jump to that, Scott, if you want to let him listen.
King Ramesses went to pieces 7,000 years ago, and passed a law that Egypt must go dry. He took the liquors from the shickers all the way to Jericho, but kept a little toddy on the slide. The desert of Sahara flows with honey, so they say, till through a vision came along and dried it up one day. Sahara, we sympathize with you, Sahara. Now we're dry like you. I know why Cleopatra put that snake against her skin. She lost her mind completely when she lost her garden gin. Overkiel took a leap into his caravan. He took his wine glass and away he flew. And ever since all those Egyptians moved their funny arms so queer, they got that way from reaching for imaginary signs of fear. Sahara, Sahara, now we're dry like you.
We'll stop there for this piece. I mean, we could do an entire 1-hour discussion just on the different quotations and musical styles that are reflecting in that piece. It's, the piece is a hoot for us musicologists who just want to analyze it to death. But we won't do that. We'll jump to something that's a little more straightforward and no less humorous. We have the Alcoholic Blues, written in 1919 by Albert von Tisler and Edward Laska. And of course, for those who go to baseball games, you will recognize at least Tisler's name because he's the writer of the most famous baseball tune in the world, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. This piece suggests that essentially we're going to be listening to a blues tune. But the reality is it is not blues at all. It is essentially a stride piano piece with words that was very characteristic of the 1920s. A straightforward ragtime, but in the music, there are quotations, particularly one that was also very popular during the 20s, called How Dry I Am. And so you're beginning to find the Tin Pan Alley composers really trying to find other related tunes and bringing them together. Nolan, how about we just go ahead and play this?
Sure.
I love my country, indeed I do, but oh, that war has made me blue. I like fighting, that's my name, but fighting is the least about the fighting game. When Mr. Hoover said to cut my dinner down, I never even hesitate, I never frown. I cut my sugar, I cut my coal, but now they dug deep in my soul. I got the blues, I got the blues, I got the alcoholic blues. No more beer, my heart to cheer. Goodbye, whiskey, you used to make me frisky. So long, highball, so long, gin. Oh, tell me when you're coming back again. Blues, I got the blues, since they amputated my boobs. Lordy, Lordy, war is, well, you know I don't have to tell you. Oh, I got the alcoholic blues. Oh, I got the alcoholic blues. Some blues.
We jumped to 1920 with a song, I'll See You in Cuba. The tune itself really is quite lovely. I think we selected this particular cover piece because of the extraordinary artwork. And we just thought, let's go with this. And then we started to dig a bit deeper into, so what does Cuba have to do with American prohibition? And we suddenly discovered that, during the 1920s, Havana was called the Paris of the Caribbean, and largely because of the American Prohibition Act. In 1916, the travel records indicate that there are about 45,000 visitors a year going to Cuba. After Prohibition is enacted, essentially that number goes up beyond 90,000 people per year. And most of the people going to Cuba are going for the booze, the free-flowing alcohol that they could not get in the United States legally. And of course, rum runners took immense advantage of the close location of Cuba to the United States. And we have at least a couple very famous politicians whose fathers' careers begin as rum runners, running alcohol from Cuba to the United States, at least for the Rockefellers. that's where their money comes from. And after Prohibition, they invested it wisely into other things. Nolan, what do you did a lot of research on this one. What can you tell us? Got to turn on your microphone.
Yeah, got it. So there's a couple of interesting stories with this that I pulled out. So in 1915, Cuba's Bacardi Rum Company established its own bottling plant in New York City, but it had to close at the start of Prohibition. So the company started marketing with Pan Am Airways. They created a tourist campaign that tried to get people to come to the country in order to drink. And there's a ton of Americans that end up going to Cuba during this time. The famous writer Ernest Hemingway, for instance, spent several years in Cuba during this period of time. And his Old Man and the Sea and several of his other books center on the island as a result. This particular recording that we have is famous vocalist from the 40s. This is Nat King Cole, 40s and the 50s. And I think this is one of the better versions of the song that was recorded. A really gorgeous rendition of the song. And I'll put up the lyrics as we listen to it.
Okay.
Not so far from here, there's a really crazy atmosphere. Everyone is going there this year, and there's a reason. Have you been longing for the smile that you haven't had for quite a while? If you have, then follow me, and I'll show the way. I'm on my way to Cuba, that's where I'm going. Cuba, that's where I'll stay. Cuba, where wine is flowing, and those dark-eyed fellas like their fellas panatellas. Cuba, where all is happy. Cuba, where all is gay. Why don't you plan a trip down to Havana? Hop on a ship and I'll see you in CUBA.
We'll stop there. Some of you are probably thinking, well, this is a 1940s tune, and what's that got to do with Prohibition? Well, actually, Nat King Cole's performance far less, because it's clearly the tune's recorded much later, but it's interesting to listen to the variations of content within it. We've shifted into 3 distinct styles, which is a very common characteristic of the music of Tin Can Alley. However, he's not altered any of the words or essentially the melodies out. He's just taken some creative license in terms of the piece.
Scott?
Yes, Nolan.
Yeah, there's also that, so the drum break in the middle, clearly Cuban influenced. And some of this exchange that we have, we go to the country to Cuba, access the alcohol in the 1920s, and then by the 1930s into the 40s and the 50s, that cultural scene that was developed in Cuba returns to the United States in jazz forms, and so we start to see this cultural exchange that's going back and forth between that, and it's a really clever maneuver by this ensemble to insert some Cuban sounds in the middle of that passage.
Well, let's leap back to 1919. We've got America Never Took Water and America Never Will. This particular tune was clearly written as a response to the impending enactment of the Prohibition Act. And the whole theme of this particular piece of music really reflects the soldiers' absolute disgust with the American country, the fact that here they go off to war, sacrifice their lives, and now that the job is done, suddenly now they come back and the things that they enjoyed before they went over have been taken away from them. And I think this song, more than anything else, really reflects the soldier's perspective. Let's go ahead and listen to this. We'll stop there. This is a 1919 piano roll performed by Charlie Straight and Arnold Johnson. And while we don't have the words, in fact, we've not been able to find a recording of this with the words. I think it captures much of the effect. And of course, right at the beginning, they introduce How Dry I Am within this ragtime melody. And it's just, again, you're seeing this blending of things. The Tin Pan Alley artists are clearly, as I said, kind of the equivalent of the Saturday Night Live folks today, just commenting on just what they don't like about the social movement of the 20s. This slide, we can't talk Prohibition without talking about the beer barrel polka. This is a fun piece, and Nolan did a lot of research on it. So Nolan, why don't you tell us a bit about it?
Right. So this actually was a polka that was originally written by Jaromir Vejvoda, and it was called Wasted Love. It was a love song, and sort of the person who didn't get to be with their love, and so it's sort of a lament. But the melody itself is very uplifting and fun, and so there's sort of a disconnect between the lyrics of the original lyrics and the melody itself. So when Tin Pan Alley folks got a hold of this song, They changed it. So this is Lou Brown's arrangement of it, totally changed the lyrics to this. So the lyrics reflect the sort of exuberance that people were feeling after Prohibition was lifted. And this song itself came out the year after Prohibition was ended, and so everybody is celebrating. It's meant to be celebratory, but that original song is not. So when we're thinking about this sort of disconnect, Tin Pan Alley artists, composers are not only making parodies, musical parodies of various songs, but they're also appropriating particular songs. In this case, a Czechoslovakian song that had a completely different set of meanings behind it. So the lyrics here, we should all know, and I'll put into the chat as we're listening to the song, or as well, we don't have an audio recording of this, but the song is, we should all know, roll out the barrel, we'll have a barrel of fun, roll out the barrel, we've got the blues on the run, zing boom tararel, ring out a song of good cheer, now the time to roll out the barrel for the gang's all here, is essentially the main chorus. So it's supposed to be cheerful and uplifting, and is it's a fun song all around.
And it's fun to get you to sing in public.
I am not a vocalist, so excuse my vocal abilities, but yeah.
No, you did just fine, Nolan. All right, let's move on. I think one of my favorite tunes, which I knew nothing about until we did this exhibition, is Pink Elephants. This is just a silly song written as Prohibition is coming to a close, and essentially portrays the hallucinations that are typically experienced by people who are overly intoxicated. During the 20s, my common reference for a person who's often under the delirium of heavy drink is spoken of as seeing pink elephants, which at first I thought, oh, okay, I can understand that. I don't quite understand it, but okay, I'm cool with it. But the funny part is Nolan dug up some additional research about Disney in a 1941 film. What can you say about that, Nolan?
Yeah. So in the movie Dumbo, it appears after this concept of seeing pink elephants, after Dumbo is accidentally given a barrel of alcohol after his first performance, and he starts to hallucinate seeing these dancing elephants in the background, and that's a reference to being drunk. And so what we see there in that scene in Dumbo is a clear reference to the social phrase of seeing pink elephants.
Well, we can't legally show that film portion because Disney still owns the rights to it. We do have a 1932 recording of Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians performing Pink Elephants, and it's just a delightful piece. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
elephants everywhere. I hid my head right in the bed and said a prayer. When I woke up again, what do you think was there? Pink elephants on the ceiling, pink elephants on the wall. A lavender alligator was running around the hall. I'm through with making whoopee. I raised my hand and swore that I never intend to ever see those pink elephants anymore. Pink elephants.
And we'll stop there because I'll get up and start dancing, and that will just make everybody laugh. um, yeah, we here at the Sousa Archives and Center for American Music have 75% John Philip Sousa's total compositional output. It's a unique feature of the university. In his collection is this pewter ship. It's a ship decanter that was given to John Philip Sousa November 2nd of 1924 by the Chicago Civic Music Association for his 70th birthday. The inscription on the bow and the lower left image, you can see it all written on the bow. It says, to the young conductor, Lieutenant Commander John Philip Sousa, as a birthday token from some of his Chicago friends, 1924. 1924, we're at the height of Prohibition. And Mr. Sousa felt that the Prohibition Act was the most wasteful use of congressional legislation ever produced. And he was quite outspoken about that. Mr. Sousa liked a little sifter of brandy after a concert and loved his wine. So this ship decanter was made for him, and essentially it holds brandy. And if you were to look at the image in the lower left corner, the sailor who's standing on the bow of that ship is actually attached to a square plate that when you lift the soldier off the bow, that's where you poured your alcohol into. And I don't have a good picture of the rudder at the aft end of the boat, but that's the spigot for serving out his brandy. And I just find this hilarious that we have this beautiful work of it. There are only two ships like this in the country, and one of them was given to Sousa for his 70th birthday. We've been talking about Tin Pan Alley composers and how they ridiculed the Prohibition movement. Well, in 1926, Mr. Sousa wrote The Mingling of the Wets in the Dries. It's a character piece playing off all of the popular anti-drinking and pro-drinking songs, and he blends this together in a medley. And he's set to premiere this work in a concert in Pennsylvania. And word out on the street was that Sousa is promoting drinking and will do so at this concert. And all of the Prohibition folks in Pennsylvania got completely bent out of shape and actually threatened to close down the theater if Mr. Sousa essentially played the piece. Since Sousa needed the concert, he finally agreed that he would not play Mingling of the Wets and the Dries for that particular performance. Then he goes to Chicago 2 days later and plays the tune and comments to the newspaper folks. He says, I don't understand it. It's just a simple melody highlighting the pro and anti drinking movements for us to play. But nevertheless, I think, we find Sousa kind of trapped by the Prohibition movement, and his response through music is very clear. He's a pro drinker. He is not interested in closing down his opportunity to have wine or brandy. I mean, we could spend the next hour going on, but that would put you all to sleep, or at least it would require you to get a drink yourself. But we want to thank you for giving us an opportunity to have us present to you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up to some questions and answers from you, so that we can kind of close out. Okay, stop video. There we go. I got to figure out how to use this. There we go.
Thank you very much. Do any of you have any questions? You can either type them in the chat or just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. Oh, there's a question. Does anyone have a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Have copyright laws changed since the Tin Pan Alley folks were taking other people's tunes?
You're asking, all right, Tin Pan Alley artists could borrow. They can still borrow, all right? The copyright laws that we have currently on the books are a little tighter on that. But as long as you attribute where you're pulling from, you can borrow from. Of course, without affecting essentially the total value of the original composition or the work itself. I mean,
They didn't have to get permission from the original composer then.
As a general rule, no. Just like Mozart and Haydn and so forth, if another composer borrows a piece and so your tune is being played by another composer's work, you're getting twice the bang for your time. And rarely do we find, until basically the late 20th century, where composers get completely wigged out when somebody borrows something or borrows it in a way that they feel is not reflecting on them. Then everybody goes to court and we spend the rest of our lives arguing copyright. It's ironic you asked that, because my lecture this afternoon is on copyright for my.
I asked because my husband's a singer-songwriter, and he wanted to do a parody, and it took a lot of negotiation with the daughters of the composer, and it was a mess. So simple, what people would consider a folk song, they didn't want to give me permission. So
yeah,
thank you.
That's a tough nut. If you were in my class this afternoon, we talk a lot more about that.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? Go ahead, Bob. You have to unmute yourself.
I just asked if they could play the Sousa. They closed out on it, but they didn't play the music. Can they play it?
Well, if you're willing for me to move my my laptop to the reading room, I think I have a recording of the Sousa band on one of the historic audio pieces we have in our collection. So you'll actually be able to hear a historic device and a piece of Sousa. I don't have any Sousa into this program right now, but if you're game, I'll just pick up my laptop and wander and try not to make anyone seasick as I walk out. Will that be okay?
Well, Scott, your
great.
video's off right now anyway, so we won't be able to see. You'll have to turn your video back on.
In the meantime, we have another question. Go ahead. No, we can't hear you. Do you want to type it into the chat? No?
No.
Yeah, you're
Otherwise,
unmuted. Go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I'm the one who asked for the excerpt from Sousa.
Oh, great.
Right.
You want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear it, and maybe we can get the Blauenberg Band to play
Can you turn that off, please?
The Blauenberg band specializes in Sousa, so if they ever come
Sousa.
back, then they will maybe play that.
otherwise,
Well,
Scott, I've got a Marine Band version on YouTube if we don't have the historic recording.
Oh, great. Okay,
Okay.
Lawrence should
Right.
be conducting it.
I do, Nolan. I've got Gliding Girl, which is Mr.
Yeah, I know
Sousa.
that.
Oh, goodness gracious. How do I? Okay, good.
I've played that. He wrote that for his daughter.
Yes, he did. And it's a fun piece. Let me,
Scott, you know what we would also enjoy if you're willing to show us what the studio looks like behind you.
yes, it's kind of hard for me to stand and walk. Let me first,
You have to turn your background off, Scott.
yep.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, I'm
PPS.
technically supposed to be in another lecture, but let's, we'll pretend I'm just gonna be late. All right, I don't want share.
I'll write you a note.
Sorry, we signed in late. Where are you?
I am in the Sousa Archives and Center for American Music. I'm right in the center here. Let me turn this off.
In
Where
what
is-
city?
This is in Urbana. So this
Oh,
is the
Illinois.
University of
Illinois.
Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
All right, so hang on a second. I'll try not to make you seasick.
Right, a Morning Glory. Great. The right kind of phonograph.
This particular one uses one-time use needles.
Right.
Bamboo?
Bamboo.
Yeah. So it's purely mechanical. No way to control the volume on this thing. So
That's great.
I mean, it's like, you know, the phrase, you know, put a sock in it. That's kind of like, that's the only way to dampen it.
Great.
So yeah, one-time use needle. And this is this the Victrola, Scott?
This is the Columbia, the 1910.
castanets. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good thing it's high fidelity.
I'm supposed to be giving another lecture right now, so I'm going to have to dash on you, and I apologize.
Thank you.
But Nolan is, if he stays on, he can help answer any other questions for you. And thank you. I hope you found this informative. All right.
Very much. And if you could send us some of those links, I'll pass them on to everybody else.
Okay. It'll probably be at the end of the day since I'm lecturing all day.
Okay, great.
All
Great.
right.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Did anyone have any more questions for Nolan? No? Great. Well, okay. Well, thank you, Nolan, and good luck on finishing your degree. I hope you have an in-person graduation.
Yeah, it's exciting. Just this upcoming the 15th, it's already deposited, so we'll be done shortly.
Good for you.
Thank you so much for having us today. It was fun to
pleasure.
present, fun to talk to you guys about the exhibit. And just as I said, I put the link to the virtual exhibit up. There's actually another one. Let me send this to you as well. Give me 1 second if you're interested. Here's our other virtual exhibit that we have up right now. And this one I did, this is on Hawaiian slide guitars. So if you're interested in Hawaiian music, this is the second virtual exhibit that we have up, if you're interested. And we have audio recordings, video files, picture files, and short explanations of everything that we're doing. So typically we rotate our exhibits. So we have new exhibits every year on various components of our collection. We collect fairly widely. So our areas of content interest, if you're interested in coming back to see us when we open up back again in person, or reaching out to us to see our virtual exhibits. Typically we talk about American bands, with John Philip Sousa as being the center of that collection interest, experimental music and computer music here on the campus of the University of Illinois, ethnomusicology, of which Bruno Nettel, who's a very famous ethnomusicologist who just recently passed a few years ago, just actually last year, is his body of papers in the Center for World Music is here at the University of Illinois Sousa Archives as well. And then local music and anything and everything to do with music in the Central Illinois, Chicago region. So this particular exhibit on Temperance songs is a local individual who, or a couple of collections, a couple of individuals who collected sheet music, and we have their papers from the Illinois region. So it all stemmed from the sheet music that we had within our collection that they donated to us from their own private collections. So if you're interested, just as I said, we change out our exhibits yearly, new exhibits on different topics all the time. So do check us out again. And if you do need the, let me send you the Sousa website, the regular Sousa website as well, just so that way you have that.
Yeah, and I'll pass it along via email. So if you can't.
Okay. It's just right here. There we go. All right. If there are no more questions, it was great to meet with all of you and to speak with you today.
Have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay.